So welcome. My name is Nick Olson. I work at PredictWind, have done for about 8 years. We have our awesome support team there to answer any questions you have in the Q&A box. Well, at least a few of them are here to answer questions. Some of them are working on the support desk. They're awesome. They're amazing. They're all sailors, and they are very experienced, know the product well. So please reach out to them. You can ask questions during the webinar in the Q&A box. As I mentioned, this is being recorded, and we will send out a document afterwards for anyone that registered with the commonly asked questions and the answers to those questions. So if you missed something, don't worry about it. You can either watch the recording or you'll see the Q&As. So obviously we sent out the email the other day with the promo code so that you could try the paid features of PredictWind from the free version. Lots of people want to sort of have a go at them, but don't necessarily want to pay for it. So this has been the opportunity for that. And then today we are here to talk about some of those, what those features are, and a little bit of a demo on a couple of them, and sort of what they're useful for, because I imagine that there's a bunch of stuff that you probably not even aware that we have. So I will jump straight into a screen share and crack into it. So to use anything on PredictWind, and you need to use our apps, and so we do have two distinct apps. We have the PredictWind app and website, which is what you use when you're on land at the marina. So any Wi-Fi or cell access connection, you can use the PredictWind app. As soon as you're going out of cellular range, and or even patchy, you want to be using the Offshore app. And so the Offshore app uses Gribs, which is just a file type that we use to transfer weather files. You can do your weather routing on it, your departure planning. The beauty of it is that it saves everything for offline use. So with the PredictWind app and the website, none of that, nothing that you're looking at is saved when you close the app or when you go out of it. So it's even if you're in patchy cell coverage, it's no good. I think I just need to turn my WhatsApp off, otherwise I don't know that I can do that while I'm doing screen sharing. So the PredictWind app and the Offshore app are two different things. Basically, to use the Offshore app, you need to have a standard or pro subscription. You can practice with it at home on the free version or with a basic sub, but you're not going to be able to do your weather routing and departure planning and use any of the neat tools in there. So today I'm going to demonstrate things on my Mac. So we're on the PredictWind website. We can also have a brief look at the Offshore app. I'm on a pro sub, but we'll go through the basic stuff and sort of why that is useful to you versus the free version. So let's come over here. So here we are in the main menu of PredictWind. We've got tables here. I always have, and you can, this is free to pro has this. And I like to have my tables all expanded out like this. You can collapse them up and have averaged views. And I'm just doing that by tapping, or if you're on a phone or an iPad, on the left menu, or I'm just clicking on that side there. You can all access this in the free, but just quickly, a good thing to look for with a bunch of weather models is we're looking for trends. And because I have all these models expanded here, it's quite easy for me to see the trends. And look at what's going on. Another way that you really want to look for trends is in the graphs. I didn't used to be a big fan of the graphs, but it's really warmed on me over time, especially on the day. I'm going to go sailing or kayaking or windsurfing or winging or whatever it is. Is the breeze increasing or decreasing is really a really important thing to know, because if I know that, it doesn't matter whether the forecast said it's 5 knots, but it's actually 8. The fact is, I know that it's increasing or decreasing, and especially if I get that trend across all of the models. You can see here where one of my kids is sailing today, that it's pretty consistent across the day, and even the PWG's got a bit of change in direction there, but it's not massive changes. We're talking about 10 degrees either side there. So but all of those are in the free. Wind maps is something that is there, but you can't see the high resolution stuff. So, and what I mean by that is, if I come in here and I go put it on the PW models, so you'll see I've got 2 different weather models here side by side. They're both our PredictWind models, and you can see up here we're at 8 kilometer resolution. I just click on that little box and I can change my resolution if I wanted to do it that way. But what I can do is I can just zoom in, and as I zoom in, the resolution will change. So you'll see once I got to a certain zoom level there, the resolution changed to 1 kilometer. And if I zoom back out, you'll see it changes over again. So it goes back to 8. But so yeah, so we have our high res here. Why is resolution important, and why is that being able to access these wind maps, these high res wind maps, important? If you are doing any day boating of any type, fishing, whatever it is that you're doing, being able to see this is super important. You can see here we have this island, Cowell Island, and I know it quite well. I know it's reasonably high, and you can see on the leeward side here that we're getting our wind shadowing, and how far it actually extends down is pretty interesting. That effect of that island is a long way down here. We also get, the effect up here, and if I zoom out, you don't see it, and as you get to a more coarse resolution, and then because the model cannot see those land contour changes, so you'll get funneling, you'll get thermal effects. So your sea breezes are really, really good on these high resolution models. Again, another paid feature is gust maps. You being able to see what the gusts are and where is super helpful. Often you can get quite a different picture of the forecast when you actually look at the gust maps, and you can scroll through the day and see how things develop and into the week. And you can see there that these guys are going to have a pretty rugged day tomorrow. And we can zoom out to a global level as well and look at this and look at big systems. Very interesting to look at systems, but going between the wind maps. So a wind map is average wind speed, and a gust map is up to 40% higher than that. And but yeah, very interesting, especially when we get into weather routing and stuff like that. A passage can look pretty benign, and then you go and look at the gust map. So we actually have a little feature in there that'll warn you of the difference between the average wind speed and the gust is significant, if it's a big gap. And so that's an indicator of volatile weather. So we call it a severe weather warning, and you will actually see that in the tables as well. You will you see here we've got these warnings here, and it's telling me that the gusts, the difference between the average and the gusts is quite big. And so that's an indicator of a volatile weather. And you'll see there that we have, at this time, we have these warnings for gusts. But then if I come down here as well, I can see I've got rain, and I've got, here I've got some Cape. And so we've got rain, we've got Cape, and we've got the big difference between the average and the gusts. So it's probably going to be pretty volatile weather. For anyone that doesn't know, Cape is convective available potential energy. It's the energy in the atmosphere. So you put rain and Cape together, you've got the potential for thunderstorms. So not a good time to be boating. So yeah, and we can look at the maps for Cape and see what we're looking for. New Zealand's not a very exciting place to look for Cape, but you'll see here as we get up into the islands, Pacific Islands, that the Cape levels are much higher up here. Close to the equator, the higher the levels will get, but also so does the chances of volatile weather. So yeah, everything that we're going through here are all things that are on your above free. So basic, standard, and pro features. Probably another thing to mention is you can add a whole lot of locations on your paid subs. Wave maps. So we'll actually flick over and put the ECMWF in here because I want to be able to show you something. So we have our wave maps for I'll just change the view on that. Yeah, we have our wave maps around the globe, and the ECMWF is the best wave model, mainly because it's a great model, but it also goes to high resolution. So you'll see here, if I zoom in, we're in the PWG wave model and the ECMWF wave model, and we're at 50K. But as I zoom in, the ECMWF has now gone to 14K, and you'll see it's got a bit more going on. It's actually more accurate, and this is actually a pretty big area in here. Because this is only at 50K for this sort of inland stuff, it's not as accurate. Whereas if you come over here to the ECMWF, you can see that it's a lot more accurate at picking up the effects of the land and modeling that correctly. So yeah, pretty cool. As I mentioned before, rain maps. Rain is important to people on the water because it's thunderstorms. If you've got Cape with it, squalls can come with rain. So something that we always want to be looking for. You don't want to be caught out in squalls and thunderstorms. And you can see here where we could see that Cape before. We have the rain as well. So that's you would be expecting thunderstorm activity up in this area. The other thing to mention is if you see a frontal band coming through, so rain is how we see frontal bands. When you see it on the news and you see it on the map, that's actually someone's actually graphically drawn that on. We do have that as our GMDSS working again. Doesn't look that way. Our GMDSS is broken at the moment, but you will actually see those fronts drawn on from that. We have a very clever way of doing that, which means that we don't actually, it's converting a forecast written by a meteorologist, and then the computer is reading that and drawing it onto the map. So we have, rain, cloud. Again, it's going to show us where our potential rain is. Isobar maps. Did I click on it? No. Nice to see the isobars looking for the areas of squish, especially when we're looking at big picture stuff. That's really what they are for, looking for our high and low pressure systems. Obviously, we can just click on the map here with our little thing, and it tells you, what the pressure is of these different systems. So Air temp maps, if we wanted to, you know, is it a cold front or a warm front? That sort of thing. Obviously, you can look at, you know, the temperatures around the place as well. Sea temp maps. So this is not a basic feature. It's a standard or pro feature. And so you'll see there that the colors actually, the colors cycle through. And if you're into fishing, this can be pretty useful. And, you know, when we have our Predict Fish product going, you'll see a whole lot more parameters coming in. So validation. So this tells you what model has been doing well, and you know, over at a particular spot. So this is registered against an observation. We're about to look at all the observations in a second. And so what it's doing is it's actually calculating what the model forecast and then what the actual readings were, and it's comparing them and it's ranking them and it's updating after each forecast run. And you'll see for the last week, the ECMWF, PWE, PWG have pretty, you know, quite a bit outperformed the other three models for wind speed at this location. And if you go anywhere around the world, you'll see them changing a lot, and you will see, you know, even different seasons, different times, you'll see these changing a lot. So we're looking at the 1 day forecast there, and so you see the PWG has done the best for direction there, with the UKMO and the PWE at the bottom there. So very interesting. This is nice to use if you're just, you know, if there's a bit of you know, uncertainty in the models, just to, if you go somewhere new, to look at something that's you know, what model works well in this area. You know, it's a nice little tool. And also, we used to tell people that we thought our stuff was great, and so now they can go and have a look and see for themselves. Soluna, you know, it's nice to know, especially if you're a fisherman. Right, so they're the forecast tools. I mean, sorry, the forecast parameters. You know, there's a bunch of things that you get in there on your upgraded version that you don't get on the free version. And honestly, I would feel lost if I couldn't see all these things. I would feel like I was missing out. This is one of my favorite, most visited pages in all of PredictWind, is the observations page. I spend massive amounts of time on this page. You know, everything from this camera, that's where my kids sail at that yacht club, and so I'll look at the sea state of the beach there. You'll see this is in Auckland. We have a lot of observations around Auckland. They were mainly we put a lot of them in for the America's Cup, and they're, you know, it's a really cool way to see what's happening now, and to also compare how they're working against the model. So there's a few things to look at in here. I will talk about observations for a bit because it is an awesome feature. I can come in here and I can flick between the models, and I can go, which one is, you know, doing the closest job to what I see in the observations. I can't really, you know, you do need to sort of be somewhat careful. I mean, I know that this observation here on Ringy Light, in this wind direction, the breeze is actually compressing along the side of Rangitoto here, and so it does accelerate onto this observation. If I click on that observation, I can look at the wind direction and the gusts for different periods of time, anything up to 48 hours in the past. I can see what the trends are, 12, and even, you know, if I want to, you know, get into the nitty-gritty, I can look at the last hour. So we have all these observations, and you can actually set up alerts for that, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So I could set an alert that if this observation went over 20 knots, I would get alerted. I mean, there could be a whole bunch of reasons why you'd want to do that. I'm going to go winging or kiting or whatever at that time. Or you could be waiting for the breeze to drop off. You know, it's dropped below 10 knots. I'm going to go fishing now. You know, I know that that's where the trend was going down. I was just waiting for it to happen. I can be alerted when that happens. Or there could be a change coming through and you're waiting for that change. You might be out yacht racing. Yeah, it's pretty cool using the alerts based on the observations. And yeah, so if on this map here, whatever I have displaying on the map, so let's say I zoom in a bit, I've got a bunch of observations here, and I click on table, and I will see all of the observations on the map listed in this table version. Can be pretty handy if you just want to, you know, look at the what's happening all around easily. I'm a bit of a map person myself. Another thing you can do is you can actually compare some observations on a graph. So let's say I have, you know, these few here, and I click on graph and I can see the difference between them all. Yeah, so observations is in all packages from basic, standard, pro, and is super cool. Is one of my favorite features. Local knowledge, if you don't know about it, we have, you know, thousands of locations around the world with information on each spot. There is actually some really cool stuff in here. Aside from, you know, being able to find, you know, information about new places that you go. If you click on one of these locations, you can actually come in here and see seasonal, it's not called seasonal, historical weather data. If we click on the view historical weather data, we can see it's a 10-year average of that location, the average wind speed and the air temperature, rainfall, wave height, and we can actually look at the wind and wave roses for that as well. So for in January, I don't know why that one doesn't want to work for me. Probably just because I'm on a webinar. Let's choose another one. No, maybe they're broken. Someone might want to have a look at that. Anyway, we can see the wind and wave roses for all of those locations. Another cool thing that we can do is we can actually do that for a passage. So you can actually, you know, have a passage, probably if we were going from, zoom out a bit. I don't know. Let's just click on one of these. No, Avalanche McLeods, Auckland to Russell. No. I was trying to find one to Fiji. I put a Fiji, here we go. And I can come in here and I can see all of the information for that route. So that's more of a passage planning from a seasonal point of view. Generally, you have some idea, but it is nice to see what the you know, max, you know, the averages are for that time of year. And if you know, wherever you live, if you spend a lot of time on the water, you'll know that, you know, like here in Auckland, you know, late summer, you know, we get lots of sea breezes, and you'll see that in the average, in the wind rose averages. Right, so let's get into our tools. This is most of the stuff here is standard and pro features. So, you know, your basic users, the one thing that we'll talk about at first is, I mentioned before, the alerts. So you can actually set alerts for when any of your parameters are met. So let's say I want to go winging at a particular spot and I'm not that small, so I want to have I want it to be above 15 knots, and so I can set this up to be alerted when my forecast conditions are met. So, you know, days of the week, you know, can I only go on Saturday and Sunday? So I'll have it, you know, set to alert me that it's going to be over 15 knots on Saturday, and I can set the time of the day that I want to know about, and I can be alerted either in app or via email. And so you can set the wind speed, the wind direction, gusts, you know, all sorts of things. There's a whole bunch of different use cases for this, but yeah, it's pretty cool to be able to, that's you know, letting you know what's going to happen in the future. And then, as I mentioned before, observation alerts. So I can actually set it up to be alerted, as I mentioned, when a certain condition is met on an observation. So that could also be useful if you have your boat in a marina and all of a sudden it goes above 35 knots. You might be like, okay, I'm going to go down and check on my boat. Or you could have your forecast alert set up for the same thing. The forecast is going over 35 knots. I'll go check on the boat, you know, the day before and make sure it's all tied up nicely. AIS data. So this is something that we have been working on for about a year now, and we do have a lot of AIS data in here, and we also add to the AIS network. So, you know, similar to what you see on marine traffic, if you have or someone might need to share, I think it's if you have a pro account, you can see, and actually it's a standard or pro account, you can see all the satellite AIS. So you'll see on basically every other AIS product out there that to see satellite AIS is usually very, very expensive. It's included in your sub. There's a super cool thing that we do with the weather routing in the AIS, where you can actually see, you can download over satellite, you can see 300 nautical miles of traffic around you. So that's useful to see if you're going to sail into a you know, high traffic zone. Are there fishing fleets where we're going, that sort of thing, and it can be overlaid with your weather routing. We'll have a look at that in a bit. And GPS tracking. If you're sailing offshore, using GPS tracking and having it is super cool, so that your friends and family can see where you are. You can do blog posts, you know, so that they can see what's happening out on the water. Someone on here has got basically, we'll have a look at that in the Offshore app. But yeah, so the GPS tracking, it's a standard or pro feature, but you know, you need that when you're crossing the oceans anyway, or doing any sort of coastal passages. But it's very cool to be able to track your passage and do your blog posts. Departure planning. So this is essentially a tool that we uses the weather router, but uses the weather router in a different way. And it's I love this. We have updated it recently, and you can plan a passage. And so I can put my start and finish in there. Before I did that, and I'll talk about that now. If we're doing any departure planning, weather routing, we need to have set up our polars. Probably not really the scope of this webinar, but just want to mention it. You need to put in your boat, and then from there you will be able to see what your boat speed is, and you know what the software thinks your boat speed is in any condition, and you can adjust that to make it fit to your boat. Another thing that you need to set up in here, which we're going to talk about in a minute, is your wave polar. So the wave polar, it has some basic dimensions that it puts in to the system, and so when you run your weather route, it knows what the displacement of your boat is, the water line, the beam, and the hull draft. And so then it has a basic 3D model from that. And so it knows whether you've got a catamaran or a monohull. and it will actually model how your boat is going to behave throughout that route based on the wind wave, the primary swell, the secondary swell, and the tertiary swell. It's very clever. It is gives them amazing data and can really help you stay safe out on the water. It's, yeah, I love it. It's epic. So we need to set all that stuff up. We do have tutorials, and there is quite a few webinars that we've done where we will talk about that sort of setup, and also your weather routing and departure planning. Let's just flick back to our departure planning and we'll crunch a route. So you'll see there I've just pressed download. I could have set those start and finish waypoints up with the lat long there. I could have set it to my location, but that wouldn't be much fun because I'm at home in my office. And I can save routes if I've added some in there. You can see I've got some here from some races that I've done. I can change my start time, which I can't do at the moment because I'm calculating a route. But so you'll see here, it says, oh, it's calculating the route. And so what it's doing is actually, apparently it's about 50 billion different calculations. It's crunching for every model. It's crunching every possible scenario between those 2 points. It's using the highest resolution weather models that it can. It's using ocean data, and it's factoring in my boat, the waves, my boat shape, and it's giving me these outputs. And you'll see here we've got these squiggly lines on the screen. And for this tool, this is actually not really the sort of the main decision-making tool. You can see here, we see these leaving at different times. I'll zoom out a bit so that you can see that. You see these leaving at different times, the boats leaving at different times for each of our start times. We had them spaced 24 hours apart. You can do that anywhere between 24 hours and 1 hour. And that's cool, and we can see that. But what we're really looking at here is this would be where we're starting to pick our weather window for our passage. So before we did this, we might go back to our wind maps and isobar maps and look at the big picture, look at the systems, and start to think about when a time would be that we'd go. If we were planning a passage, let's say wherever you're going to the Caribbean or, from Auckland to Fiji, you might sit there for 2 months just learning how to do it, planning, looking at the different weather systems, practicing like you do. If you want to be good at anything, you practice and you get better and better at it and understand what's going on. So then when we've sort of narrowed in on when we might want to leave, and we're always going to be flexible on that because we always sail to the weather. We don't sail to schedules. We would start using this tool and we'd be like, okay, well, let's look at the next 4 days. So that's what I've just done. I've just calculated that. And then I come in here to the tables and I go, all right, what have I got? And I've got my passage time, how long it's going to take me. I've got a bunch of, how much motoring time is involved in that because I have got my motoring settings turned on. And basically, if the boat goes below 4 knots, I'll turn on my motor because, I may not want to sit around out there waiting, especially if there's a bit of a sea state. We might just motor through till we get back in the breeze. I'm sure there's some purists out there rolling over like, oh, who's this guy? Anyway, we have our max wind speed, our minimum wind speed, which you can see here is probably why we have our motoring. And, that model there's, that departure time's got a lot less motoring because you see that the wind speed doesn't go as low as at the other departure times. So we've got a lot of things to consider here, but time upwind, we don't really want to be sailing upwind. We're cruising. We want to go and have a nice time. This isn't, the departure planner isn't a racing tool because when you're racing, you get told when you're leaving. This is for us to pick the right weather window to have a nice, safe, comfortable passage. So we've got plenty of reaching and downwind. And then we don't have anything in the 30, 40 knot range. We do have a fair bit of time in the 20 to 30. So something to consider. That's average wind speeds. So, the gusts could be higher. But what we would do once we've decided on a day here, we then go and use the weather routing starting at this time, and we analyze this further. What I really wanted to look at here was, so we see here we've got our waves. So time in 4 to 5 meter, that's some pretty big swells, or combined wind wave and swell we're looking at there. And then we come down here, and this is where our boat parameters that we put into our polar before we set up our boat, so that we know what our boat looks like. This is where this comes into play. So you'll see here percentage of time and less than 4 degrees of roll. So it's roll, root mean square of roll. We don't really need to get too carried away about what that means. You know, we know that your boat heels over, but this is actually your boat rolling like this, and how badly that's actually being affected by the wave. And so what is making that, you know, adding to those things, and we'll be able to look at this shortly when we go into the weather routing and the graphs, is that because we're looking at the combined wind wave, the primary, secondary, and tertiary swells, if they're at different periods, different sizes, you know, different directions, that's what's going to create this ugly roll. And so the same here with the vertical acceleration. So you see that first day, you know, 23% of the time we've gone above this threshold. And so here again with the roll, we went above the threshold, this 4 degrees of roll threshold. It's actually a reasonably high threshold. And so I've had people, some feedback, some people said I wouldn't go with if the wave routing told me that it was going to be more than 3 degrees. So vertical acceleration, that's in G's, so that's your up and down. You know, again, you know, you don't want everyone on board to be seasick. You don't want them to be having a horrible time. So you might want to, you know, this is why we're trying to pick a nice time to depart. Boat slamming, we usually only get that when we're sailing upwind into nasty wave states, and so we don't want to see that at all. And then we can see the polar percentage change from the waves are influencing our polar. So anyway, so we would, you know, from this, I probably wouldn't really be thinking that any of these were a good time to depart. I mean, yes, we've got reaching and downwind, but we'd probably want to go and have a look at the weather routing. So let's flick over to the weather routing tool, and we'll just calculate for now. I'm going to leave everything the same, and we can have a look at that departure 1. We'll see what the weather routing for that time, and we'll be able to look further at why we possibly wouldn't think this was a good weather window, and we'll and sort of look at a few different things in there. How are we going for time? Pretty good. Well, that's okay, so there we go. We have calculated our weather route, and so you'll see there that we actually now have you know, all the these different colors here are the different weather models. If I come over here and I actually, let's move my boat along. So yeah, we'll see where our little boat is on the blue track. I could click on the green track and it would change models over to the GFS. The GFS is the green model, or I could come down here, change my weather model, and my boat's now on the black track, which is the ECMWF. And I could look through all my different parameters. You know, we can go and have a look at the gust on this weather route, and you'll see there, you know, it's actually forward of the beam, and you know, it's 32 knots in the model. We saw that our roll and vertical acceleration didn't look very pretty in the departure planning for this time. You know, it's not going to be very nice. And then we can even just come and have a look at the wave state, the combined wind wave and swell, and you know, it's pretty big. I know if I wanted to, I could click on any point on this route, and it would give me the detailed information for that point on the route. You know, my lat long, what the wind speed is, the combined wind wave period and height and direction. So a lot of information in there. And yeah, you'd need to watch another webinar where we talk about weather routing to really get stuck into this. But what I do want to quickly look at, there's a few things in here. If we were ever playing with our polars, we can come in here and we can actually say in 22 knots. Let me just show you, just do it in the top line so you can see. So true wind speed is 18.7, true wind angle is 73. Does my boat do 8.7 knots? Yes, it does. Or no, it doesn't. You know, so if it doesn't, we need to go and change that in our polar setup. You'll see here we've got all these warnings. It's warning me that we've got roll and vertical acceleration, which we saw in the departure planning before, and we'll look at that in the weather routing now. I realize I'm going really quickly through this, but it's you know, just trying to get you thinking about some of the stuff that's in here. We also have our summary there of each of the models, you know, so are they close, are they far apart? Another way to look at that is I look at this, if I just, let's just go back to a wind model. You know, I look at this and I see all of these models basically saying the same thing up to here. You'll see here the ECMWF decides there's something else going on, and I'm sure it'll be pretty obvious what that is if we scroll through to there. You'll see it gets right on the edge of this change here, and this really light winds, and it wants to do anything to avoid it because it thinks it's going to help us get there faster. Let's come back to our tables here and come over to this graph. And so here we can see some consensus between the weather models, and that, you know, they all think it's increasing for our first 12 hours, and then we have that decline afterwards. The wind direction across the models, yep, there's some differences here, and you can see where the ECMWF decided that it wanted us to go somewhere else. So that's just when I say the ECMWF wanted us to go somewhere else, that's what the router has concluded based on the information in that weather model to give us the optimum route based on that weather model. And so that's how they vary. So it's not about one model being faster than another. It's just the fact that that's what the weather is in that model. And as we get further out, there could be differences. And so the router is trying to give us the optimum route based on that weather model. And so when we see this stuff here, where we see them all together, that's what we like to see, because we have higher confidence in the forecast because all the models are saying the same thing. You see our true wind angle there, that's us sailing. Our rain and our cape, you know, something we might want to think about, go and have a closer look at. But what I want to show you some more is possibly why was that, you know, why did we get the roll in the vertical acceleration? I mean, yeah, we can see it's pretty windy, right? It's not really the most pleasant trip, but you can see here we've got the combined wind wave and swell. If I go to, and we can see, you know, this early part, we're around 40 to 50 degrees is the angle direction. If I flick over to primary swell, and boom, you know, we've got a swell coming from a vastly different direction. Our primary swell, secondary, again, slightly different, does sort of match up there with the primary and tertiary. So we've got, you know, if there's no tertiary swell, it won't show up in here, but we do. We've got 3 different swell states out there. So that's probably, you know, obviously it's reasonably windy and it's, you know, reasonable size wave, but combined with the fact that we actually, you know, but that can be fine, you know, we don't mind that if it's all working together. But when we've got all these different wave states working against each other, it's not pretty. And it's really something that we do need to consider to keep ourselves safe and have a nice passage. So I could go through the period of all of those as well, and I could look at the currents, and we will briefly look at the currents, you know, and I could, you know, here we have our roll and vertical acceleration in the graphs. So for this weather route, we can also look at that over here in wave. I like looking at the graphs, but some people might like looking at the tables for it. Ocean data, depending on where you are in the world, this is a super big deal. Let's go back to the map. Obviously from New Zealand to Fiji, it's not a super big deal. Off the coast of Australia it is, but if I'm over here in the US, for example, and I press calculate, we're dealing with massive currents, looking at the Gulf Stream. It is, that not considering this, not looking at this is life and death. This is massive amounts of current. You're going to sail through them. We can have our weather route overlaid on it. And we want to be looking for, to cross the Gulf Stream, we do not want to have wind against current. It doesn't like me motoring all the time. Must be light winds at some stage, but you can see there that the router wants us to cut across it pretty quickly. But we would need to flick over to our weather map to see what the wind was at that time when we were going to actually be crossing the Gulf Stream. And we've got a pretty interesting looking piece of weather there. It might be right. Get on the back of that. And you can see that's where our motoring came from. So yeah, but yeah, ocean data, critical piece of information. Even, when you come further down here, there's these eddies, and you don't want to, you might want to know what's going on. So with our wave routing again, we can change, how we do things on board, and how we, what safety protocols we might have. The vertical acceleration is really high, the roll's really high. We're going to try and sail around it, or actually we're going to sail through it. And we're just going to, you don't go on deck unless you're clipped on. Everything's stopped, which it should be anyway. Everything's stowed well downstairs, all that sort of stuff. What we will do is we will very quickly go and have a look at the Offshore app and share screen, and I will find it. PredictWind Offshore. Share map. So here we are in the Offshore app on my Mac, and you'll see that this all looks pretty different. We have all these this menu over here. It does look like our weather routing page that we were just on, and we can flick through all the different things in here. But how this all works is I just clicked on the download button there, and we can control all our parameters. So I can turn different weather models on for my grids that I'm going to view against the weather routing. You're always going to get the weather routing, because the weather routing is going to give you the best information available, and it's a really small file size. And it's calculated on our servers. If you were to download all of the data that you're calculating in the weather route, it would be a massive file size, and it would take you ages to do. So the fact that the weather router does that all in once, by sending off this little file request to our servers, and our servers then ping it back, is really awesome. And so then we control all these file sizes to download our grids to view, to give us the visual to view with our weather routing. So it does work differently to the web version that we were just on, but you can do all the same things. You can do weather routing, departure planning, the destination forecast. That's if you're in a remote location and you're on a satellite connection, you might want to get information for that particular spot. So it's where the red dot is, and you get that, and you can adjust things in here, your polar speed adjustment. At night, we might be sailing slower. We can adjust that down. If we want to, we can change our motoring, we can turn our wave polar on and off, we can change our depth avoidance. The router can avoid, we'll use a depth contour from CMAP, and it will avoid, that'll be your boundary, your depth boundary rather than the coast, which is really helpful, especially in certain places that you're sailing. If you want to, don't want to go into any, shallow water where things can go badly quick. And you can change the current model that you're using in your routing. So especially that where we just looked with the Gulf Stream, you might want to look at the different models and you can compare that to the SST and see which one's doing a good job. We can turn things on and off in here. We can get our GPS tracking, our AIS data, and we can download it all. And in here, we can choose our connection type, Iridium Go exec. Whether we're on another satellite connection, we can select that. We would need to change our Wi-Fi to whatever connection we were on, and we would download all of that. I'm not going to do that because I feel like we're running out of time. But what I do want to do is if I just come in here and, oops, wrong button, come down here, and I'm going to just turn my AIS on. And so this is what I was talking about earlier, that I can see all of the AIS targets within 300 nautical miles of where I am, which is pretty handy, especially if I was coming into a high traffic zone or if there was fishing fleets up here. If I actually just quickly come in here, because I know that that's old, and I just download that AIS data, I'll get a lot of AIS data. Of course, this does not replace what you see from your VHF, 30 nautical mile AIS, but this is 300. Oops. Well, what have I done? Close. And you'll see there I've updated that AIS, and we've got a bunch of some boats all around us, and I can click on them and see what they're doing. He's doing he's fishing. So if our routing was running through here, he's doing 4 knots. If we were sort of 12 hours away, we might want to think about putting a boundary in and going, making sure our routing wasn't going through this guy. Same here, fishing. So we wouldn't want to go through that because you see one fishing boat, there's probably 20 and their nets and little boats, etc. Okay, I think I will wrap that up now. I'm sure there's been some questions along the way. If you do have any questions about how any of this stuff works, please reach out to our support team. They are amazing and very knowledgeable. We have recorded this. We will send out the recording of this and any common questions. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. And stay safe out there, and thank you for coming and watching.